John Prioleau is a two-time Patriot League champion, Fordham Hall of Famer in the class of 1992. His penchant for big shots remains legendary, one of the most notable performers in the extensive history of the Rose Hill Gym. And after 18 years as an assistant coach and a professional career playing basketball, he enters now his fourth season as the head coach at San Jose State University. Coach Prioleau is catching up with the Ramily. Coach, thanks for stopping by.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me.
Coach, let's go all the way back to the very beginning. You were born in New York City. You grew up in New Jersey. Tell me about your Fordham experience as a guy who grew up in the metro area coming into the Bronx.
Yeah. Wow. Times have changed a lot since that time period. Basketball, not that it's not hot in New York City, but back then when I was coming up, it was the mecca of basketball. Mark Jackson, Pearl Washington, Kenny Smith, the list goes on and on with guards coming out of the area and out of the metro area, and even out of New Jersey as well. So, it was a great time. And, I was lucky enough that I was recruited by several schools, and Fordham was one of them. And, it was a great opportunity for me to stay close to home and play amongst friends, play in Madison Square Garden. That was a big allure for me at the time. And I think for most up and coming basketball players in the metro area. So, and the most importantly was the education.
Coach, how often do you actually get back to New York City, being on the opposite coast now? And most of your coaching career has taken you west of the Mississippi. So how often do you get back to New Jersey or the Bronx, or even the last time you saw a game at the Rose Hill Gym?
I've been moving west, like you said, ever since I got into coaching. I was actually back in Rose Hill on the campus actually last year because I went on vacation with my family. I took my wife and my son. I have a 9-year-old son, beautiful wife. We took a trip over to Europe. In a 14-day period, we hit a bunch of countries. We came back through into America, and we had a couple of days. And even before that, I had a chance to be in New York for a little bit to see my mom, my brother, and my sister. And I took a day and we went up to Rose Hill, and I showed him the campus, showed my son the campus, showed my son the plaque, the Hall of Fame plaque, showed my son the picture. I think there's a picture in the hallway of one of our teams, I think, or something. I think they had me maybe laying the ball up or something. I don't know what it was, but it was a full circle kind of a situation for me and for my wife and for my son, more importantly. So that was great. But that was the one time recently. And then I have been back every now and again, not so much for recruiting because basketball's grown so much that wherever you are, you can find, I wouldn't say the same player. I'm not going to diminish the talent that's coming out of New York City, but basketball's grown so much that you can find relative talent in the region that you work, if that makes sense. So coming back and recruiting in the area, really, you're almost wasting money going that far when you can stay local in your region and find predominantly the same player.
Yeah. You mentioned your son. You and I were flipping emails back and forth before we spoke, and a couple weeks ago, a video of Mike Breen using what's now a famous call, bang, to describe your game winner against Seton Hall. And you were saying, I'd love to show my son the one on ESPN against Holy Cross in the Patriot League tournament. Do you find it's interesting because you don't look like you graduated in 92, but it was a while ago, trying to explain to your son, like, yo, I was a baller.
Yeah. At 9 years old right now, his guy's LeBron James. My guy was Michael Jordan. You know what I mean? So everyone's got different eras and different heroes and things of that nature. But that time period, that year was a very special year for Fordham. That might have been our best year and our best team, I think, in my time there. However, that wasn't the team that went to the NCAA tournament. So, that year with all of those shots, and there were several of them that year. It's amazing how one shot, and I'm so glad that I am on Twitter, because I'm not really a tweet guy, but you know what? In this day and age, you have to be in social media. You have to do those things. And someone referenced my Twitter handle, so obviously I caught wind of it and I saw it, and I was like, wow, and it brought me back to that time period. And I was like, I was just looking at that, and I'm like, it's amazing how one shot, but then again, several shots that year made such an impact on the kids at the school, people associated with the university, and then how it made people feel in society, and how sports can really help people in all walks of life. It can bring them together. It can heal them, make them feel good. And I got all of that just in that one, that one snippet of video. And it was just amazing. So I tweeted out whatever I tweeted out, but it was in all good intentions.
John, since you left, the banners are a little more few and far between. Describe winning Patriot League championships to someone who, in my case, wasn't alive to see them. So describe what those teams were like, what the atmosphere was like, and being kings in your conference for a 2-year stretch where you guys looked unslayable. I mean, these were some of the great teams in Fordham history.
Yeah. It was a unbelievable time. I mean, I have to give all the credit to Nick McCarchick. I mean, he was my college coach. He recruited me. David Spiller, Paul Hewitt, John Fitzpatrick, they were the assistants at that time. They were able to put together a team that was tough. It was a tough team. And Coach McCarchick, he coached me, and he told me exactly what I needed to hear to become a leader, to help our team. And not just me. There were other really great players on our team. Fred Herzog, and there's a bunch of players. Damon Lopez, great players. Sanford Jenkins, who I was just on the phone with yesterday. Those times were special. And I think what was interesting about that time period is that if you look up in the rafters, and I don't know if this is true, but you have to look up in the rafters, is that, ever since that period when I was there, 88 to 92, I don't think there were a lot of banners prior to that. I think you have to go back to the 70s and 72 and Digger Phelps and stuff like that. So, when you look at those things, we were a part of something special. And it took a lot of hard work. But we also had guys on our team that loved basketball, and that we loved where we were. We wanted to stay. In this day and age, everyone's moving and transferring, and I mean, it's nuts, right? So it was totally a different era and a different time period. But in terms of like the winning and what it brings and the camaraderie and the sacrifice, I mean, it was all worth it. And that tweet and that video of that shot, and then people running onto the floor, there are a lot of people that were happy that day. And that's part of what college basketball brings to a community, to a school, to each kid on the team, to parents. It's amazing how that that happens, and it makes everyone happy.
John, you end up getting one shining moment out of winning the Patriot League, and one of the notable kind of big matchups in Fordham history to me is facing Coach Cal in UMass in the NCAA tournament. But describe kind of the feeling of having all the lights of college basketball shining on you as an individual, as a player, and your team and the university.
So, Yeah, so that was a really, really big accomplishment for us. Our group coming in, we wanted to make it to the NCAA tournament. That particular year, our team wasn't great. It wasn't as good as the year before, which was when all those shots were made, which is what I just referenced. But during that year, our group knew that we were going to make it to the NCAA tournament. So when we did get there, that was the big accomplishment. Looking back on it and now being a coach for like 20 years, we as a group probably weren't ready to take the next step, which is, hey, let's win a game. Now, going into it, yeah, you're like, yeah, we're going to win. But we were just so excited of just getting there. To be honest with you, that was probably one of my worst games I've ever played. But, I'm an honest guy. I'm not going to fabricate stories. So, but it was a great moment in time. It was great that we played against Coach Cal. Just for history's sake, we actually played Coach Cal the year before in the NIT because the team that I was talking about, and I made those shots in junior year and all that, that was a great team, but we didn't get to the NCAA tournament. We actually went to the NIT, and we lost to Coach Cal at our place. It was a great game. And it was so interesting that we happened to play them the next year, and we were in the NCAA tournament, and they were in the NCAA tournament.
Coach, you describe 20 plus years now as a collegiate coach, as an assistant, as a head coach. Was it something at Fordham playing for Coach McCarchuck or going back to high school in Jersey or your time as a pro that made you say, I want to stay in basketball. I want to coach kids, who are finding themselves as a career?
Yeah. After I exhausted my playing days at Fordham, I still had the basketball bug in me. So I went and traveled and played overseas and, tried out for several NBA teams and things like that. So I did that for about 8 years. But in that time period, I came across a lot of people, and I've always had people tell me I should get into coaching. It's very interesting because I was a physics major at Fordham, and my physics teacher, I love him to death. He was the best teacher. Dr. J. Mancini. So if he sees this, hopefully he reaches out to me because I thought he was outstanding. But he actually told me that, hey, have you ever thought about getting into coaching or teaching? And I'm like, well, teaching, I don't know about, physics, but I did graduate, and he was great, and he helped me out. But not only just him, but a lot of people in my life from Fordham days, after Fordham, and then leading up to my first job, coaching job, I always had people say, hey, have you ever thought about getting into teaching and coaching? So when I was exhausting my basketball, feel and love, and I did it for as long as I could, there was a job opening, actually with Bob Hill. So I was on staff with Bob Hill for 1 year, but I knew I was only going to be on for 1 year, just to see if I wanted to coach. And from the first day, it was like, it was like an adrenaline shot. It was like, man, I get to put and give back to these young players that are coming in. I get to help them. I get to mentor them. I get to coach them. I get to give them all the experiences as a student athlete. And then from there, it just took off. And then from there, I went to I went to Wichita State with Mark Turgeon. And then from there, I went to Marquette with Coach Crean. And then from there, I went to Iowa State with Greg McDermott. From Greg McDermott, I went down to TCU with Jim Christian. And then Jim Christian, I went to Colorado with Tad Boyle. I've worked with a lot of coaches. And what's crazy about this is all of the coaches that I've worked for are still coaching college basketball, except for Bob Hill. He was kind of NBA guy, but he's still consulting. And I talk to him every now and again, not all the time, but every now and again. But all the other coaches that I mentioned are still coaching. that is rare in itself in this day and age, right? When people are 3-4 years gone, moved, right? These guys are still coaching. So yeah, the coaching tree is pretty tight. I've been tutored by a lot of great coaches, and now I'm trying to do something and build a program here at San Jose State.
I was going to ask you because I started clicking through and like, okay, who was the coach at Marquette then? Was it,
yeah,
okay, it's Crane. He has a great run, goes to Indiana and so on. And all these guys have been at power conference schools or are at them now. What is that like? Because learning physics in college, I did a major at Fordham that was equally, in the end, not really connected to my career. How is that education? I mean, over 18 years to have coaches of that caliber every year and the variety of it.
Yeah. What you learn is there are a lot of different ways to win, because not all the coaches are the same, which is great. So you're learning, it's just like a fountain of water of knowledge, right? Just hitting you, every single coach that you've worked with. And then you're traveling around the country and you're meeting all these people. And as an assistant, you're expanding your recruiting base, right? From the East Coast all the way across the country, and then globally as well. So, hats off to all of those guys, because all of them are great coaches. They're still coaching. And I lean on them every now and again. So yeah, it's an awesome profession to be in. It's demanding and it moves really fast.
Now that I think about it, you've coached in every time zone. You played in Italy, right? And you're a world traveler. I mean, is there a house you can't step in right now and to have some connection to a kid?
Well, probably not. But I will say this. I think what I've experienced, and it's not just me, there's a bunch of coaches out there, young coaches that are in the profession. So I think if you move around, what you figure out and what you develop is you develop the ability to be able to cold recruit. Cold recruit means you're not from that area. You can go somewhere, land in that city, in that region, but you know what recruiting is. And it is the development of relationships and communicating with people and connecting with people. So it really doesn't matter where you're from. What matters is whether you can evaluate and see the talent, target the talent, bring it in with respect to whatever level you're playing. And that's what, not just me, but there are a lot of coaches out there that experience that, especially when you travel around like that.
Coach, let's talk about your current project. You're at San Jose State. It's a program that appeared to take a step forward this past year, and naturally, when a new staff comes in, you're trying to recruit players that fit what you want to do, and all that takes time. That is one of the best mid-major conferences in the country. The A-10 could make a similar claim. How do you try and rebuild a program in your image, especially during the coronavirus pandemic, that really does handcuff you a little bit in your ability to go cold recruit or recruit at all?
Yeah, it's tough. I don't know what the next months or year, like you're saying, depending on this COVID, I'm hoping it's going to go back to some type of normalcy, but the challenge will be recruiting and evaluating in this time period. We're in a great conference. The Mountain West Conference, like you said, is very challenging. It's a very good league, very competitive league with a lot of really good coaches in it. I've been associated with a rebuilding situation in 2 stops, which is Wichita State and University of Colorado. So I know what it is and I know what it takes, and it takes time to be able to do this. This is nothing new that I'm saying. I've done podcasts and Zooms with donors and my people back here in San Jose. So everyone knows exactly how I am and how I look at it. So it's nothing new. It takes time. You have to go out and find the talent. What makes it really hard is in this day and age, you have a lot of kids moving and transferring. That is a big issue in our game. And just to give you some numbers that aren't exact, but it is relative and close, you have over 900 kids that have been in the portal this year, just this year. Now, of the 900, I think around roughly 500 or so have landed somewhere. So now you have 400 or so kids that are still out there that are looking for a place, and we are in June right now. Now, understand that we're talking about just the portal. We're not talking about the high school seniors that are still out there that may be late bloomers that need to find a place, that are really talented. And we're not talking about the junior college sophomores out there that are looking for a place. So that number is astronomical with respect to how many Division I schools there are out there. Now, the NCAA was talking about granting a one-time transfer and play, which was supposed to be talked about around May 20th, so not too long ago, but I'm pretty sure they had to shelve that because of COVID, right? And now you have these transfers, and now if you open that up, it's the floodgates are like, oh my goodness, you wouldn't know what your team is until the first day of school, right? So it gets really crazy when you start talking about the impact of things happening plus COVID-19. So to answer your question, yes, things are going to move differently. Knowing people and having relationships around the country, really important to trust. And then the one thing that hasn't changed is the video part of this. So as assistant coaches, as head coaches, we will still get the video and still watch and evaluate off of that, because we've always been doing that. It's just going to be magnified now, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Coach, I want to ask two more fanciful questions and then broach a more serious topic here. For one, you and I were going back and forth. I kept my beard. Where did yours go?
I shaved it down a little bit, man. I couldn't get on here. It just could.
You're trying to represent a program with some pride and some. Hey. I just went for it.
Yeah. Mine was pretty thick, man. I had to shave it down a little bit. A little bit.
Coach, I'm interested to hear, now that you look back on it over 25 years later, if there's one game you could relive as a fan in the stands that you played in, where you just feel you'd be on the end of your seat the whole time, what game would you want to sit and watch from your Fordham career?
I mean, the championship game, the Patriot League championship game. Yeah, probably in 1991, my junior year. We had to beat Holy Cross at Holy Cross because the conference tournament championship was at their place. And we were the number 1 seed, they were the number 2 seed, and we're playing them in the championship game. So you couldn't hear, and we won that game. And I think that if I had to go back to any game, I would have to choose that one. Yeah, for sure. And what a lot of people don't know is that it's kind of interesting, because as good as that team was, because I personally think that team was better than the next year's team that went to the NCAA tournament. But that particular team that year, we actually went undefeated in the league until the last game. Our last regular season game was at Holy Cross. Okay? We lost that game. If I'm not mistaken, you'd have to go back and look, but I think we lost that game in overtime, and I was on the line to ice the game and missed. Wait, this is true. You know, it's funny because, you know, everyone talks about the shots, but for a guy who was a closer, right? I also missed, and I missed the free throws that would have iced the game, and we would have gone undefeated in regular season, and we lost the play-in game that year. And if you look back on that time, we might have gotten an at-large bid.
Yeah.
If we would have run the table, right, win the conference championship, go play the play-in and lose, Fordham might have been able to get an at-large bid that year, and then the next year we went to the tournament.
Well, in the end, you end up multiple-time Patriot League champ, Fordham Hall of Famer, NCAA, NIT. I know that one. It sounds like it still stings a little bit, Coach.
That game, yeah, it stings a little bit. Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. But to answer your question, I think probably the most exciting game would have been that conference tournament championship game.
Coach, I want to broach a more serious topic that I think everyone in the country is paying the attention that they probably should have been paying attention to it the whole time. The Black Lives Matter movement has exploded in the country. As someone who has a significant voice in your community in San Jose, as a basketball coach, as a leader of young men, and as a legend in our community, I want to give you the platform to describe your thoughts as to what's going on now and how you see things moving forward from that.
Well, I'm glad you talked about that, because we just had a department Zoom meeting yesterday, and I had a chance to explain to our athletic department just the significance of Black Lives Matter and what it actually just directly is. And it was an emotional meeting for everyone. And obviously not just at San Jose, but it's obviously permeated through our whole country, and then obviously globally as well, because it's not just in America, it's everywhere. And, you know, we just talked about streamlining exactly what it is. And it's just, you know, the oppression and brutality of African Americans in our society, and being able to now stand up and talk about that and make it very relevant in everyone's lives. So everyone is seeing the result of really three things that happened like in about 3 weeks. Young man being shot down south, young lady in Central Park calling the police on an African-American person, and then you have George Floyd to cap it all off. Those three things happened very quickly in our society. But the Black Lives Matter movement, it really is signifying what's gone on to African Americans for centuries. And thank goodness we have technology, to be honest with you, because now people are starting to see what people have been trying to protest for a long time, and now it's coming to light. And we have a great country, okay? We have a great country. Everyone is looking at our country to see how we handle things. And I think we're just now starting to take the steps to try and heal. The protesting those are just steps. There's a groundswell happening, and everyone needs to understand what is happening and then why it is happening. And we talked about those things, not just me, but every coach at our school. Administrators were involved. Again, the whole athletic department was on the Zoom. And, you know, me, myself had a chance to speak, and another African-American lady, young lady, had a chance to speak that works here at San Jose State. So it was very enlightening for everyone. And I think we can solve it, but it's going to take time. It's going to take a long time. It's not going to be immediate, but it can happen.
Well, I certainly hope that it does. And Coach, I think is a Fordham history buff to an extent. Being able to talk to you has been terrific. We're happy to have you as part of the Hall of Fame and the community at Fordham, and obviously wish you all the best at San Jose State, you and your family, and wish you good things in coming weeks as hopefully life begins to get a little bit back to normal with everything going on. Thanks for taking the time and catching up with the Ramily, Coach.
Guys, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.